Hello everyone, in this video we are going to talk about fracking, its history, pros and cons, and its impact on the international environment. Since the Industrial Revolution, our energy consumption has risen unceasingly, the majority which is supplied by fossil fuels, like natural gas. So, what is fracking? It's a technique to extract oil and gas from places that weren't possible before. All the oil is stored in porous rocks that let the oil be extracted, but the ones that had not the porous were a problem from the industry. Fracking, that comes from the words hydraulic fracturing, describes the recovery of natural gas from deep layers inside the earth by using the process of drilling down into the earth to create cracks, so the oil and gases in the porous rocks can flow into the pipe and be easily extracted. A shaft is drilled kilometers into the earth, and then a horizontal hole is drilled into the layer of rock, when the fracking fluid is pumped into the ground using a high-performance pumps. The mixture penetrates into the rock layer and produces tiny cracks. Because the pipe is too long, there is a lot of friction, so the ejected water loses power. The solution is to create a mix of water and sand with chemicals to lubricate the pipe, which is a very big damage to the environment.
One major benefit is lower energy costs tapping into large domestic oil and natural gas. Deposit has led to a big increase in available resources and decrease in price, which means substantial savings for consumers, also increasing jobs, economic growth, and increasing governmental revenues. By other hand, fracking has multiple collateral effects. The toxic chemical used are seeping into our water supply, also increasing water consumption. They're also slowly polluting our air and increasing the greenhouse gases, which may cause major problems in the future. If fracking companies would stop or find a more environmentally friendly way to frack, the world would be a better place.
The hydraulic fractionation technique was developed by Edward L. Roberts, who in 1865 called the exploitative torpedo, the use of dynamite and nitroglycerin detonations to fracture the subsoil and increase the production of oil and natural gas in the states of Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and West Virginia. In the Soviet Union, the first hydraulic fracturing well was carried out in 1952. Other countries in Europe and North Africa used fracturing techniques, including Norway, France, Italy, Bulgaria, Romania, and other countries. The fracking boom is characterized by being very fast and unexpected. A decade ago, in the United States, there was a lot of talk about the depletion of natural resources, the inevitable increase in energy cost. The heavy investment in renewable energies was not advancing at the expected speed. The U.S. Department of Energy anticipated a change for the worse in energy landscape. Fracking was a way to get this resource in large quantities and produce more energy. This is why, currently, the United States is the country that produces more barrels of oil per day. According to information from the Colombian Association of Petroleum Engineers, Colombia has been preparing for 10 years with the technical studies that are required. The regulation of the explorations is already in the list. This practice, which has been banned in several countries of the world, such as Germany and France. Colombia is not sufficiently prepared to respond to the risk and effects of this exploitation technique. For the operation of a well with this extraction technique, 9 to 29 million liters of water are required, without the return of that water source to the surface being guaranteed. There are some risks and uncertainties for fracking. Scientific evidence in the world shows that there is a very high cost that should not be assumed by Colombian society. This model also puts the availability of water in Colombia at risk, because there is no treatment of these water sources to return them to optimum quality. For this reason, the government must think about the biodiversity of the economy so that it does not submit only to oil.
Now we are going to analyze the impact of fracking techniques in the international political economy. First, it is important to take in account what IPE means. IP is a social science that attempts to understand the international global problems analyzing both economic and political spheres, using different tools and theoretical perspectives. Oil is usually considered a political commodity due to the strong dependence every country has with energy. Crude oil, and more specifically fracking techniques, have highly polarized political issues all over the world. For traditional approaches such as realism, economic advantages or disadvantages do not matter as much as how this practice might benefit the military power. But for modern practices such as constructivism, the environmental risk of these practices poses a very big obstacle. Also, fracking practices for some perspectives means economic opportunities, cheaper energy bills, autonomy for workers, and growth in the international competition. So although fracking has generated lots of controversy, it has managed to modify both the politics and the economics of every country.
Now, let's see the next question. Can fracking affect the foreign policy of the countries? Well, to answer this question, let's see an example. Actually, United States is one of the most consumers of oil on world. For that reason, the United States government, with all its power, historically have tried to control the prices of oil. And they do it by intervening decidedly in many of the countries where oil is mass produced, for its obvious benefit, and part of its strategic policy to supply crude at the lowest price. But fracking actually has allowed the United States obtain its own crude oil in its own territory more economically and quickly. According to the McKinsey consultancy, it is estimated that in the year 2020, the fracking effect could add up to 4% to the US GDP, becoming the world's leading producer of oil and gas, even above Saudi Arabia and Russia. But the question is, how can this affect the foreign policy? Well, the answer is simple. The fracking effect is helping the United States to become energy independent. This may be one of the reasons why its intensity of participation interventions in other countries has declined, mainly OPEC members. That is, its extractive foreign policy is changing, and this can avoid a lot of international conflicts. So the answer is yes, the fracking can affect the foreign policy of the countries. In the Colombian case, according to the information from the Colombian Engineers Association of Petroleum, Colombia has been preparing for fracking for 10 years ago, with the technical studies required. But there are several foreign companies wanting to extract oil from this country, with the technique of fracking. However, there is still no free way for this, affecting by this position the extractive policy of some countries.
The arrival of fracking has precipitated a silent American revolution, allowing the United States to leverage its power in the international arena. The oil still remains one of the biggest commodities in the geopolitical aspect for nations. While it is true that the world is moving towards alternative energy sources faster than ever, hydrocarbons are expected to remain king for at least another 3 decades. That it's a long time in politics. The critical role of oil in shaping U.S. foreign policy over the past many decades has now drastically changed, altering the dynamics of the United States' international relation policy. In fact, many of the country's policies of engagement and dialogue with its traditional rivals such as Iran, Russia, and Cuba are possible today because the United States is close to achieving a significant milestone for its economy and national security: energy. The analysis of global shale formations outside the United States revealed that more than half of the world's shale oil resources are located in Russia, China, Argentina, and Libya. On the other hand, other countries consider their shale resources as a possible game changer. Poland, Turkey, and Ukraine hope to reduce their dependence on conventional gas from Russia and Iran. While the United States has embraced fracking, some countries have opposed it completely, including major economies in Europe. Germany, Europe's largest economy, decided to ban fracking. Germany's decision is based on the impact on the environment, specifically on drinking water resources. On the other hand, China is sitting on almost as much shale as the United States and Canada combined, but mountainous terrain, water shortages, and other restrictions are making the process difficult. Confrontation over Ukraine has delayed Russia's shale energy development. U.S. sanctions have restricted American firms on offering fracking technology, equipment, and services to Russian projects.